Hello everybody, my name is Rick Habgood and I'm going to be your host for this segment of Citizens Forum. Our guest for this segment is Rani Earnhart, and Rani is the Vice President of Fair Vote Canada, BC. And we're going to be talking about the past referendum that we just got the results from about approximately a month ago. And originally it was put forth that it was going to be a very tight race, that actually the percentages were like very low between the yes and the no camp. So there was a tremendous amount of campaigning that happened at the very end of the referendum. Then the referendum ended, then the results came forward, and it was 49% on the no side. They wanted to keep first past the post, 31% on the proportional representation side, and 20% didn't even vote at all. Rani, what happened?
Well, a lot of things happened, and a lot of people were surprised by the results because we were expecting a tighter race. But in the end, it kind of shows that the no side was more effective in their messaging, and they were able to reach people. If you look at the breakdown of the results on a riding basis, you see that in the areas where it passed, we passed by maybe a margin of 60%, we were doing well. But in the areas that we failed, which is the majority of the province, we would fail by huge margins, like we'd get a 20% turnout. So when you average that across the province, we ended up with this result. So it showed a large amount of non-uniformity across BC in the opinions.
What else do you think contributed to the referendum failing?
Well, I do think that exit poll was spot on, and that a big reason why it failed was that people didn't feel informed. But I think I want to delve into that a little bit more deeply. So the issues involved are fairly complex, and it's easier to vote for the status quo than to vote for change. And to explain the issues involved in electoral reform and in these particular systems that were chosen on the ballot is a much more complex thing than the no side messaging. And there's a famous quote by Joseph Goebbels who said, if you tell a big lie and you repeat it often enough, people will believe it. And unfortunately, that really happened here. The yes side was a bit all over the map. There was, the education wasn't deep enough. The education covered the mechanics of the systems, which confused people a lot. Some people got it, but there was no or inadequate education on what mattered. The basics of what proportional representation is, the reason why we're looking at changing at all, and what benefits it would bring to society. People have to have a reason to make such a big change. And that reason was not explained to people. And the educational materials coming out of Elections BC, they were adequate for what they were, but they were details of the systems. They weren't the big picture, and they didn't give people motivation. On the other side, and then all the yes side was sort of fragmented into many groups. There's the NDP, there was the Greens, there was independent groups, there was Vote PRBC, the official proponent, all kind of spreading this happy messaging, but it wasn't particularly focused. On the no side, we had the Liberals very strongly campaigning with a very focused campaign with very narrow messaging. And they spread it effectively through media. And people heard it, and they listened to it, and it was little sound bites that they could understand. And even though in many instances what they were saying was completely untrue, people believed it. Things like you won't have local representation, your MLA is going to be in Vancouver, goose-stepping Nazis on their TV ads. People may not have been believed it, but they get the gist of the fear factor of the potential of a small party to hold the balance of power. And that really, really frightened people. So as I spoke to people, educated people, knowledgeable people, I would get these results like, oh, well, if we have PR, then it's just, you don't get to vote for your candidate. You can just vote for a party list. So the no side was very effective in getting their message across about party list, party list, party list, whereas in reality, none of the systems, it wasn't clear enough whether they were going to have party lists or not, because there wasn't sufficient detail presented on the systems to determine exactly how they worked. So the confusion was as much on what wasn't said as what was said to people.
Right. Well, one of the things that I like to talk about is that most of the PR groups, along with the NDP Green Electoral Reform Task Force, presented to David Eby a very clear question that they wanted to see on the ballot. But he changed that into two questions, and one of the questions being the systems. Why do you think he changed that? Like, why didn't he take the advice of what it seemed to be people that were in the know and had a very clear understanding of what the electorate needed?
Well, there's multiple reasons there. There was input received from thousands and thousands of British Columbians via this survey. And it's impossible to have a perfect question. If you only have one question that's general in nature, would you like to change our system to PR or remain the same? People won't vote for that. They won't vote for the unknown. And they're also looking at the precedent of the previous two referendums in 2002, 2005 and 2009, where there was a choice between the current system and one particular system, and those both failed. So they were going for something different here. They were genuinely trying to give people choices, and where it fell down again is in the education, and the education wasn't there, and the lobbying on the yes side was not up to the strength of the lobbying on the no side. And the NDP campaign, the MLAs did not hold town halls, they did not go out and make speeches. The Liberals were all over it, and their messages were heard. And when people hear messages from people that they respect, that are in positions of power, even if they're currently in the opposition, they're still a major party, they believe it. There is no law against lying in political statements. There's truth in advertising laws that do not apply to politicians. So there's no legal basis to rebut any of the information that was coming out. And the yes side was kind of out-campaigned. So I don't blame David Eby. I don't blame the media. Certainly I do think that the media was biased. I absolutely agree with you, but I don't think that that's necessarily the major issue. It was part of the whole picture, which led to the defeat.
I agree. I don't blame the media 100% for sure, but they were in there for sure. Yeah. And there were many factors. Why would a Green voter vote no to pro-rep? There's nothing but up for the Green Party.
I think the Green voters voted no for the same general reasons that other people voted no. They found it confusing. They didn't necessarily, they weren't necessarily doing it for strategic advantage. Their interests are in the betterment of society. And they believed the same no rhetoric that was successful with the population as a whole. Same thing applies to the NDP voters who voted against. They listened to the media. They may have conservative values. They needed to be convinced, and they weren't convinced by the campaigns and the information that they had.